Nobody in County Wicklow was prepared for the morning Sullivan. Silky O'Shamrock bounced out of the hawthorn hedge with a laptop under one arm, a ledger under the other, and a grin that could blind a bishop. Silky was a leprechaun of the modern persuasion. He wore the regulation green tailcoat and shoe buckles, true, but the hat had a solar panel sewn into the brim, and his pipe was an electronic vaporizer that smelled faintly of spearmint Bitcoin gum. For 4 centuries he had done honest work. Hide a pot of gold, wait for a mortal to nab him, bargain for freedom, rinse and repeat. But the 21st century had offered him disturbing news. Humans were no longer just chasing gold. They were fabricating value out of pure mathematics and calling it crypto. Silky's mouth watered at the possibilities, so he brewed a triple espresso and invented sham coin. The pitch was simple. Every sham coin would be pegged 1-for-1 to a real pot of gold. Leprechauns, after all, had thousands of those lying around in damp bogs, gathering mildew and existential ennui. Immortal asset, finite supply, Silky murmured, rehearsing in front of the mirror. Stable, shiny, and utterly recession-proof. He wrote a white paper titled Rainbow-Based Monetary Policy, uploaded it to a server hidden beneath the hill of Tara, and scheduled a launch party at the Ferry Stock Exchange, a clearinghouse run by brownies with abacuses in the roots of an ancient oak. Word of Shamcoin's initial pot offering, the fabled IPO, spread faster than a sheep in a grease wool contest. Elves, pixies, and disgruntled trolls subscribed within minutes. Even a banshee registered, though her Know Your Customer form was mostly screaming. Silky promised transparency. Every transaction would materialize as a small but glorious rainbow, visible to the naked eye, color-coded according to market sentiment. Greenish rainbows meant bullish trades, reddish rainbows meant someone had panic sold, and ultraviolet rainbows visible only to owls signaled wash trading. The blockchain itself he christened the Clover Chain, each block stamped with a 4-leaf signature and some spare limericks for flavor. Launch day dawned with a sky the color of cream liqueur. Silky set up a makeshift podium on a mossy stump, plugged the laptop into a toadstool power outlet, and hit enter. The Ferry Stock Exchange bells rang, tiny chimes made from repurposed snail shells. A thundering whoosh and a column of prismatic light shot into the atmosphere. Newspapers across Europe ran the headline, Rainbows Uprupt, Market Giddy. Humans down in Dublin pointed camera phones at the sudden kaleidoscope overhead and asked Siri for the price of that shiny new coin everyone's losing their minds about. The price, incidentally, was doing somersaults. Shamcoin launched at 1 gold coin per coin, soared to 3 coins, dipped to half a coin after an influencer sprite tweeted, more like scamp coin, then rebounded to 10 coins once the same sprite admitted he'd sold too early. Every wiggle of price drew a fresh rainbow, so that by lunchtime the Irish sky looked as though a drunken impressionist had vandalized heaven with fluorescent crayons. Air traffic control in Shannon Airport had to reroute planes around magenta squiggles. Tourists pulled over on the M11 to gawk. Sheep, sensitive to color, began walking in anxious circles. Silky, though, kept calm by nibbling clover biscotti. His phone, a repurposed acorn shell with 5-GOM coverage, wouldn't stop buzzing. A giant from the Wicklow Mountains asked for an institutional tranche. A mermaid wanted an aquatic liquidity pool. The Bank of LepreCoin, an institution essentially run by Silky's cousin Finton in a hollow log, asked if it could issue Lepre-stable tokens pegged to the pegged coins. We'll call them double pegs, Finton suggested. Silky agreed. Everything was hilarious at that altitude of hubris. Meanwhile, the human world tried to make sense of a currency backed by mythical furniture. CNBC flew in an analyst who wore a tie covered with shamrocks and the haunted look of a man forced to discuss rainbows on live television. It's gold, it's scarce, it's enchanted, he muttered, while pie charts spun behind him like possessed frisbees. Pinterest moms began posting recipes for pot of gold avocado toast. A Silicon Valley venture capitalist offered to build Silky a headquarters in San Francisco made entirely of biodegradable confetti. The Irish Central Bank, never eager to legislate rainbows, convened an emergency meeting. Their chief economist, a dour fellow named Padraig McSpreadsheet, scowled at footage of leprechauns stuffing kettles under roving rainbows to refill reserve. "This is monetary anarchy," Padre complained. "We can't have asset-backed auroras crossing EU airspace without customs forms." Someone suggested regulating the colors, maybe charge VAT on violet. The meeting dissolved when a spontaneous rainbow burst through the window, knocking over a water jug and turning it into mead. Back in the glen, trouble brewed. Leprechaun traditionalists, those who still wore buckles the size of dinner plates, accused Silky of debasing their cultural heritage. They staged a protest under a banner reading, "Keep Gold Underground." One elder, Granny Bucklebeard, rattled her cane. "If we start swapping pots for pixels, next thing you know, the humans will be trading our shoemaking secrets on eBay." Silky countered by live streaming himself opening new smart contracts with a flourish, claiming each line of code was written in ancient Gaelic. The crowd went from booing to booking and at 15 gold coins a pop. The tipping point arrived when somebody discovered that rainbows were in fact finitely divisible. A hedge troll, half hedge fund manager, half actual hedge, assembled an algorithm to slice large trades into microtransactions, creating a machine gun spray of pastel arcs. For 30 minutes, so many slivers of rainbow crowded the upper troposphere that meteorologists mistook them for a weather front and issued a colorful gusts advisory. Birds collided mid-flight, dazed by radiant glare. Global positioning systems hiccuped. Somewhere over the Atlantic, a confused pilot radioed, "Tower, I think I've flown into a Skittles commercial." Needing scale, Silky imported unicorns to act as validators. Only a horn could stamp a block in sub-rainbow time. That resolved congestion but introduced, well, unicorns, picky creatures upset by anything less than organic glitter. They demanded 30% of all transaction fees plus scented hay in perpetuity. Silky negotiated them down to 25% and a Spotify subscription of lullabies. To keep margins afloat, he introduced surge pricing on Saturdays, when humans were most likely to impulse buy crypto between grocery runs. Every surge Saturday, the skies above Ireland became so bright that fishermen in Newfoundland could tie hooks without lanterns. All this drew the gaze of Seamus von Goldman, a dwarf banker who prided himself on short-selling every exuberance since the South Sea bubble. Von Goldman smelled frothier froth than a latte in a jacuzzi. He borrowed Shamcoin, sold it for euros, then aired his doubts on Gomberg TV. "Pots of gold backing? How do we know they exist? Has anyone audited those pots?" The interview was timed to coincide with a thick fog that muffled rainbows, making them look faint. Sentiment flipped quicker than a leprechaun landing on grass after being spotted by a tourist. Shamcoin slumped 60% in an hour. Silky's laptop erupted in red candles. Rainbows turned a worrying shade of puce, triggering the first widely recognized rainbow crash. Crows, which had been using the arcs as slip slides, plummeted in surprise. The ferry stock exchange went into circuit breaker mode. Brownies rang alarm clamshells and pulled the master root plug. Silky's vaporizer sputtered. For a panic-stricken moment, he wondered if Granny Bucklebeard had been right. Had he minted folly? Enter Maeve, a pixie compliance officer with luminous wings and an MBA from Notre Dame du Mushroom. She kicked open his mushroom office door. "We need real transparency," she said. "Show the world your pots or lose the plot." She proposed the pot-proof protocol, a live video feed of each pot of gold, GPS-coordinated and time-stamped. Silky balked. "That's centuries of secrecy," Maeve stared him down. "It's this or watch Von Goldman dance on your balance sheet." They implemented it overnight. Smartstones enchanted GoPros were installed at every rainbow terminus. Viewers could scroll through channels, pot 1, pot 2, all the way to pot 999. Wallier auditors certified the gleam. Children binge-watched, fascinated by leprechauns, polishing coins like obsessive raccoons. Confidence soared. So did price. Von Goldman's short position burned like a peat fire in July. He received a margin call, delivered by Eagle, and had to cover at triple what he sold. The comeback, naturally, produced a sky-wider super rainbow bright enough to tan a walrus. But now the humans truly piled in. American college kids mortgaged textbooks. A Swedish metal band rebranded as sham coinage and sold NFT tickets redeemable for holographic gigs beside standing stones. Even the Vatican phoned politely to ask if a modest allocation could update the treasure of St. Peter. Liquidity exploded. Unicorn validators started wearing sunglasses at night because the blockchain's glow never slept. Silky hired an army of sprites as customer support. They answered so many emails with sparkly gifts that corporate spam filters choked. The strain on nature became obvious. Rainwater, refracted constantly, grew thick with residual color. Puddles in Dublin glimmered like oil slicks. Children bent to taste them and wound up speaking fluent Roy G. Bibb for 3 days. Bees, attracted to ultramarine wavelengths, forgot how to get home and unionized. The Irish government, under mounting pressure, passed the Spectrum Management Act, limiting rainbow emissions after midnight. Silky responded by introducing night mode rainbows, black backgrounds with neon edges, perfect for clubbing. Regulators wept softly into their tea. Then, one Wednesday at precisely 11:11 a.m., the Clover chain hit block 1 million. Tradition required a ceremonial megapot deposit. Silky brought out the family heirloom, a cauldron so old it carried inscriptions in Ogham and early emojis. As he tipped the coins in, a rogue unicorn sneezed, lurching its horn into the validation room. The block duplicated. Suddenly there were 2 megapots on the ledger, but only 1 in reality. A textbook double spend. Pandemonium. Markets froze. Rainbows flickered like disco strobe lights having a seizure. Traders screamed. A single sham coin traded simultaneously at 20 coins in Tokyo, -5 coins in Dubai, and potato in an Arkansas farmer's market that had misunderstood the assignment. Memes exploded. Schrodinger's pot, the golden glitch, unicorn fork. Von Goldman smelled revenge and prepared a new short. Silky gathered all stakeholders, trolls, pixies, unicorns, even Granny Bucklebeard, under one enormous mushroom dome for a hard fork summit. 3 options emerged. 1. Burn 1 pot's worth of coins, restoring parity, but angering holders. 2. Magically conjure another pot, risking inflation and moral hazard. 3. Pretend nothing happened, blame solar flares and go for pints. After 69 cups of dandelion espresso and 8 rounds of interpretive clog dancing, they voted for a 4th option: merge the duplicate block into a multispectral super asset named Mega Rainbow DAO. Holders of the offending coins would receive voting rights to allocate the surplus gold to community initiatives, which mostly meant funding fairy rave festivals and subsidizing colored light therapy for bees. It was, Maeve admitted, the most on-gram form of corporate governance ever invented. The patch went live, causing the skies to emit a single, perfectly straight rainbow from Dublin to New York, which pilots used as an impromptu flight path. Traders cheered. Von Goldman, who had shorted again, found himself bankrupted, forced to move into a hollowed pumpkin, and, ironically, began accepting sham coin donations marked thoughts and prayers. With crisis averted, Silky faced a new problem. The pots of gold were running low. Leprechauns had always relied on the assumption that mortals rarely located more than a fraction of pots. Now, however, each pot was not only known but live-streamed. Opportunistic treasure hunters with metal detectors formed day tours. One drone hobbyist tried to airlift pot 187. The footage went viral until a flock of unionized bees blocked the propellers in a daring mid-air strike. Still, the drain was real. Silky's R&D gnome Artie algorithm proposed monetized meteorites, harvest lumps of extraterrestrial platinum, and declare them cosmic gold. But Unicorn said space dust gave them hives. Maeve suggested carbon credits for reduced tsunami risk due to rainbow diffusion, but the science was sketchy. At last, Granny Bucklebeard herself solved it. "You don't need more gold, lad," she wheezed. "You need to leverage what ye have, wrap it." Thus was born Wrapped Pot Token, WPF, a synthetic derivative representing claim on future pots tradable at half the gold, but twice the fun. Investors devoured it. Soon Shamcoin juggled spot gold, wrap pots, unicorn subsidies, and bee therapy. Analysts coined the term mytho-fi. The IMF invited Silky to Washington to discuss folk-based reserve currencies. He declined, citing an allergy to fluorescent lighting, but sent a hologram composed entirely of sparkles, which testified eloquently before the astonished committee. Yet, deep down, Silky felt the first tremor of fatigue. What had begun as a cheeky modernization now required all-night monitoring, diplomatic wrangling with mystical species, and 24/7 rainbow compliance. He missed the quiet thrill of burying a pot, humming an old reel, and sipping dew at dawn. The money, though colossal, felt weightless, as if he were juggling soap bubbles made of guilt. So he hatched one last plan: exit through acquisition. Rumor had it that a startup run by literal unicorn startups, baby unicorns still growing their first horns, wanted to build a metaverse of eternal dawn where rainbows arced forever. They lacked a currency. Shamcoin had one surplus. Silky arranged a discreet bonfire meeting atop Sleeve Foy. Contracts were carved into moonlight, then notarized by a phoenix. The deal: Unicorn Dawn Inc. would absorb Shamcoin, maintain pots of gold as heritage reserves, and grant Silky a perpetual royalty of 10 glitterbasis points. On closing day, a final mega rainbow rose at sunrise, then gently faded, its colors folding back into ordinary daylight like curtains at the end of a cosmic stage play. The Clover chain ran hands-free now, validators humming along to lullabies. Silky packed his laptop, ledger, and vape, waved to Maeve, and walked into the hedgerow with a sigh lighter than thistledown. Some say he's back to basics, hiding a single pot behind waterfalls and teasing hikers for sport. Others claim he's in the Bermudas consulting on rumcoin, but every so often when markets wobble and rainbows appear in weird places, the Sahara, the moon, a suburban car wash, you can almost hear a faint chuckle. Sullivan O'Shamrock, reminding the universe that value is and always has been the funniest joke of all.